So we had some upsets in the primaries that happened here in Tennessee very recently, and one of them was here locally, where incumbent State Representative Patsy Hazlewood was defeated by just over 100 votes in the Republican primary for District 27, and of course was defeated by Michele Reneau. Now, what's interesting is the day before the primary, our friend Brandon Lewis, the founder of the Tennessee Conservative, predicted this was what was going to happen. He was campaigning for Michele, so we're going to talk about that right now here on Yaffee Live. Welcome to the show, everyone. And joining me on the show is Mr. Brandon Lewis, the founder of the Tennessee Conservative. Brandon, how are you today, sir?
Man, I'm great. Happy to be talking to you. I appreciate you having me on.
So, yeah, you call. I had never, I'm fairly new. Didn't know who you were, but apparently everyone in the building knows who you are. So you got a name for yourself. You had called in and you would say, look, you think Michelle's going to win, and you were working for her, and she did win. So I'm curious, why do you think she was able to pull this upset?
Well, the first thing to set the stage, it's important to know a few key facts. The first is she was outspent by the time the dust settles about 20. That means for every dollar that Michele spent, Patsy Hazlewood and all the corporate special interests spent 20. So that's the first thing to think about.
Wow.
The second thing to think about is almost every Republican official, not all, but almost every Republican official in Hamilton County endorsed Patsy Hazlewood's record as if, she was so conservative she made Ronald Reagan look like Barack Obama. And they stood behind it, right? I mean, you got Bo Watson, Weston Wamp, Cody Wamp, people on here that just completely surprised and shocked me. Bill Lee, Marsha Blackburn, almost everybody on the commission that's a Republican. But the thing that happened was very simple. Patsy Hazlewood's awful voting record on immigration, Second Amendment, right to life, and a variety of other issues, medical freedom, got put in front of the electorate, and every time somebody had the opportunity to see the record, they determined that it was not indeed conservative. So I think one of the big questions above and beyond how was Michele able to win, other than the fact that she's a fantastic candidate with a great message and a good team and just a swarm of adoring, appreciative volunteers that work their keisters off, is the fact that how in the world can almost every GOP person in the county tell, especially Bo Watson, because they share the same district, right? Tell everybody that this record is real conservative, yet when primary voters see it, they say no, it's not. So there's this huge disconnect between what leadership thinks and feels and says is conservative and what primary voters feel and think is conservative.
Well, and you think part of that is she was the incumbent. They wanted to just support their fellow Republican who was already in there? I mean, is that what kind of drove that?
I assume so, but you've got, in my opinion, this fiduciary responsibility to the electorate to tell the truth.
Oh, I agree.
And I mean, I understand here. Listen, if you tell the truth, it usually costs you something. And often if you lie, you may get something. And so telling the truth is, not synonymous with the political class. That's probably one. If you ask, which profession lies the most, politicians probably up there, maybe at the top. And so it is just very strange to me that our party is not really standing by the platform, but rather all the politicians just circled the wagons with each other, and I think that does the electorate a disservice.
What's interesting, though, is Michele was able to break through because you had mentioned, okay, Patsy maybe doesn't have the conservative record that we want from our representative, but she spent a lot of money, got her message out there. I mean, how was it that Michele was able to break through that?
Well, it'd take too long to explain it. I'm an old campaign hand, and I love the technical aspects of running a campaign. While everybody else is having these emotional feelings and telling me about their feelings, in my mind, I'm thinking about numbers, methods, strategies, tactics. Because it is a marketing, sales, operation, and recruitment undertaking to win an election. It's very difficult when you're up against those kind of odds. But the other thing that I don't think that people realize, and this is a little bit less, more art than science, is Patsy's the enthusiasm for Patsy among the people that voted for her and supported her was always very low. Like there was no ebullient Patsy supporters. There was a bunch of people that maybe feared her or worried that Hamilton County wouldn't get a bunch of pork if she wasn't sitting on the finance committee or whatever else. But there was nobody that like would go take a political bullet for her like Michele Reneau supporters were. I mean, they were energized, excited, enthusiastic. And when she met somebody at the door, talked to them in person, she's very relatable. She cares about what people think. She's comfortable with a wide variety of people, Michele is. And so the personality makes a big difference when you run for office. And I think that Michele just had a far more attractive personality, and it engendered a lot more enthusiasm.
Yeah, and I really need to get her on the show as well because she's going to be in the assembly, most likely. I mean, I'm guessing she's not going to have too much trouble beating. Is there a Democrat opponent?
There is. I believe, I couldn't, misspeak here, Kathy Lennon, and we're going to need all the Republicans to turn out. Okay. Like your last guest talked about, there's all these left-leaning special interest groups, many of which fund Republicans, but that now will probably, in some cases, fund the Democrat. Yeah. There are some super donors in the state of Tennessee, and so we're going to run just as enthusiastic and energetic campaign. I'm not doing it. I'm done. I might help a little bit, but so I've done all I can do. But Michelle's team, not speaking for her, will run a good enthusiastic campaign in the general, because you can't ever take anything for granted. You just can't. Right. About the time that if you take something for granted, Yaffee, in a political situation, about the time you figure out you're in trouble, it's very often too late to do anything about it. And so you don't want to get caught flat-footed. You want to run scared from day one and run through that finish line, because you just never know. You never know what's going to happen tomorrow that could change everything. And so you just have to be prepared for all contingencies and keep moving forward.
Speaking with Brandon Lewis, he's the founder of the Tennessee Conservative. You know, it sounds like talking to you, and you know a lot more about Tennessee politics so far than I do, but it sounds like you definitely have some frustrations with the General Assembly. Even though it's a super majority, you feel like it's not really conservative enough. Am I picking up on that right?
Well, it's not. It is not. It's almost like we have I always say in Tennessee we don't have a GOP. We have a COP. We have a corporately owned party. and you take for example illegal immigration. Not probably. I know by survey and I know by polling, it is the number one issue in Tennessee. Yet every bill on illegal immigration, number one, a good clue is, because we have everything is top down in Tennessee in the legislature. If the governor doesn't push it, if Cameron Sexton or McNally doesn't push it, like it usually doesn't happen. Rarely does anything ever get out of committee. I mean, if it doesn't have their blessing. So it's all top down. So every bill that would stop the mass transportation of illegal aliens, that would cut off the benefits, that would cut off the employment, the taxpayer-funded education, which cost us almost $1 billion a year here in Tennessee, probably will be $1 billion by a couple of years from now. All of this stuff gets in front of committees. It's exactly what the GOP primary voters are yelling for, and yet there's no enthusiasm for it. And when it is brought by the few brave conservative souls, they're making a statement, but they know that the rhinos are going to kill it. And so that is, you could go on by example, all the corporate welfare that is wildly unpopular, that gets doled out in the millions and billions of dollars every year, where Republicans pick winners and losers for their crony capitalist friends that kick back lobbying money to them. And it's just a mess up there. It's when I started covering this stuff 4 years ago, I never thought it would be as corrupt as what it is. It has been eye-opening, but I do see some bright spots, and I'm hopeful for our state, and I continue to think that we can increase the conservative minority that's up in Nashville, so that we can get some of these things done that people are crying out for.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like the problem is complacency, right, in a way, because in one sense, we're like, oh, we're happy we have a supermajority. We want to be a conservative Republican state. But the problem with having such a supermajority is you don't have the competition. So you get Republicans up there and they're complacent and they feel like, well, I mean, I can get away with this because what are you going to vote for the Democrat? I mean, I know Alabama was kind of like that as well. Is that kind of the case here?
I think it is. And, I've often said this, and this is not something that probably wins me a lot of points with folks. It would be great if we could get some more Democrats up there in the legislature. Because I think if we actually had Democrats that could move things around a little bit, if the margins were narrower, they would have to fight them. Right now, they're irrelevant. I mean, Democrats in the state legislature I could not think of a worse job on planet Earth to get elected to than to go up to the legislature. I mean, you might as well. I mean, I don't know what goes through their brains as they sit in those seats and have, other than maybe raising money and building a name for themselves, they have. I mean, there's nothing that the Republicans will let them do, with a few exceptions. And so all the issues that we have in education and a lot of other issues, if you heard our GOP leadership speak as they travel the state, they try to make the bogeyman whatever Joe Biden's doing, right? Whatever, because everybody, there's villains and heroes, and we all know who they are on the national scene, not so much on the state scene. And you would think that Democrats ran our state when they talk about the problems we have in our state, that they prevent the solutions from happening. And the truth be told, if you're unhappy with something in Tennessee state government, there's only one party that's in charge, and that's the Republicans. And if we're going to move it in a more conservative direction, people that listen to your show are going to have to get more engaged. They're going to have to call their state reps, go meet with them, visit them, email them, ask tough questions when they go out to speak. And the last one I would say, guys, research these people that you go vote for. I mean, go to Tennessee Conservative News, type in the last name in the search bar. We put out a voter guide. We put out a Rhino report. If you went to the gas station, Yaffee, and if you asked 100 people the name of their state rep and state senator, you might get 15% of them that could tell you.
Yep, I
maybe.
believe that.
And then if you ask a further question, can you name one thing that happened in the General Assembly last year that was really important? I bet that number would go down to 1 or 2%. We got to educate ourselves.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I mean, we're looking at the voter turnout as well, which kind of proves your theory there. Brandon Lewis, he is the founder of the Tennessee Conservative, and you can read it right now if you want, TennesseeConservativeNews.com. It's TennesseeConservativeNews.com. Brandon, always appreciate it, my friend. I know we'll talk to you again soon.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much. Keep up the good work.